So good afternoon. So Nistoanagok Mianistikganasi. So my name is Kelly Provost. I'm from Begunny. My Blackfoot name was given to me by Louise Crop-Haired Wolf. So that I look forward to. Yeah, we're just going to kind of share we come from children's services, so we come from a different aspect. So child protection, social work, that's kind of our background. So we just kind of wanted to, a year ago we came and we, we attended this. So we're really inspired. Now we're like, crap, why did we do this? We should. So, but yeah, I'll let Hope introduce herself.
Okay. I'll introduce myself when I start my slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll wait. So yeah, so we'll just kind of start. Yeah, just welcome. Thank you all for attending this. If I was coming, I'd go golfing or something at 2:30. So no, but so we're Begunny Child and Family Services. So in Alberta, where we are, we have they're called Delegated First Nations agencies. So for us, it's like, so we work for kids that are in foster care, kids that are in, child protection, needing protection services. So our region, like the very south, so Begunny, and right now we have approximately, we serve probably 150 kids in the province of Alberta that are from our nation. So that's kids that are in the foster care system, they've aged out, so there's all kinds of programming. So just something I want to, quick stat that, so right now, just to know so for 6 to 8 steppy children in Alberta, there's approximately, I bet you there's 1,100 right now that are, in our region in Alberta. So just kind of know that's a huge number. There's over 1,000 kids that are, Begunny, Siksika, Kainai, that are all in care and in the system. So that's kind of, just the work we do is we've worked with these kids first. I've worked at this agency now for 23 years, and basically, we've seen, when you follow policy, Alberta policy, it just led with you apprehend and let's talk later. And, so that's kind of, we've seen throughout the years, and just kind of learning cultural ways, learning, everything, learning about culture. We're here to help. We're not here to threaten or work with that. So, and I guess the biggest strength always comes from just learning culture, identity, learning, our own ways of knowing. And some of the stuff, so what we found with kids is, a lot of these kids, when they age out, like the 60s scoop is a huge example. A lot of these people now, they're in their 60s. They don't know Blackfoot. There's little kids that speak more Blackfoot words than them. So that's kind of, that's scary. And now we have that too with a lot of kids that are in this system. They don't know anything about their identity. Some of them don't even know who their second cousins. So stuff that we kind of learned that are normal, that's kind of stuff what we've seen with the children in care is they don't have that. So we have a responsibility now to take care of these kids because legally we're their guardians. So we think, okay, what's the best way to, these kids need to know where they come from. We need to make sure, we don't need to, an unfortunate thing too is if you go to Galt Gardens in Lethbridge, bet you 7, 8 out of 10 will say I've been in care. And that's, so we don't want to, brag about that stat. We want to come to these colleges and these universities say, see that stat. The kids are coming out knowing where they come from, not, the high rates of homelessness, high rates of, dependency issues. So I just kind of want to share kind of just how we, I've been the director now for over 9 years and just how it came about. So just kind of this first, so we, years back, I seen all the, here in Browning was the first one and Siksika, they created these language apps. So I was so amazed like 8 years ago. I was like, gee, this is amazing that these language apps, and it's like, how come we can't do that back in our home community? So, and us and, just kind of know we're a social work office, we're a child protection. So it's like, so we kind of, reached out to, work with people and then, basically there's a lot of, to work together. So basically with, okay, let's just do this on our own. So we created our own app. So that's something you can still download it. So back in when was that, 7 years ago, we launched the first one. So that was Begunny Batabisons. That's our ways of knowing. So it provided just basic, basic terminology for kids. So that way, when you have a kid, like we have lots of kids in non-native foster homes, Mennonite foster homes, Filipino foster homes, now African foster homes. So we're seeing a huge increase of, different people in Alberta taking care of, of Blackfoot, of 6 to 8 steppy children. So, we thought, okay, how can we work with them rather, because sometimes it's hard to have your own, when we hear that term, we're returning our children home, and sometimes our own don't even want to help, but we don't want to be, there's so many other gaps that, that we're trying to work on to, to change that. But so back in 2016, we launched that, the first one. And right after we did, it was basic things. It was like counting, it was basic words like animals. And then after that, as soon as we launched, we were like, crap, we should have did it this, we should have did that. So then, yeah, so back, so this would have been 2018, we came up with more. So then some of the things that we came up with is, can go to the next one. So just some of the things like kids to learn the prayer, because that's one of the things like just so, because in that part a child can learn the prayer, and we kind of used it with phonetics, and that's something to keep in mind with a foster parent. Okay, so that way even if it's a non-native foster parent, at least they're teaching them some basic things, so that way they can memorize it. So that's kind of shares about that, and also just understanding more about Piikani, just so that way they know where they come from, because some they're learning about different things, and so that's kind of like learning with this data. And so when we came up with this app, that was the kind of the first thing. Go to the next one. So and then also too, we kind of understood there was clans, so there's lots of there's so many clans, and okay, well, how do I know that? Because there's I asked my dad, where do we come from? He said, you're from the Lone Fighters clan. So just to learn about that, and a lot of these kids in care, just to start knowing that, okay, this which clan do you come from, because that way you identify where you come from. And then a lot of creation stories, so we put Napi in the rock, because that's something a lot of people that we forget. A lot of these little kids, we want them to be teaching their younger siblings those type of basic stories. And then it went to kind of categories, so at least we're able to add again, like with the we're able to develop different sayings, so that way it's phrases, so that way kids are picking up more like phrases, not just basic words. And then we utilized, there was tons of pictures. We were able to go to the Glenbow and just different, that have different IDs. And then also we had a lot of our elders just to share stories about things. So a lot of them will share stories like why you get your Blackfoot name, why you offer tobacco, like why all those things. So just basic protocols. So that's that was a good thing. And then also one of the things that I always say, if you grew up 1980 or earlier, a lot of a lot of hand signals. Like that's just how we grew up. I grew up in Fort Macleod, so the towns were there was Kainai, and then there was Piikani kids, so we grew up together. So I grew up with lots of, and it's like we'd be little kids getting in trouble from the teacher, and we'd always be mad and we'd be communicating with. So we knew that. So that was something. And then when I started working with teens in foster care, so this was going back 15 years ago, you'd try communicating, they'd have no clue. So it's like, oh, they don't even know that. So that's at least something that I captured. And you'd ask them basic words, they didn't know that. So we're able to utilize a couple of our elders that know all this. So just how you explain stuff. So like a lot of us, we know what that means. So we wanted to just capture that. So that way these little kids can start learning that. And, we've seen a way of, okay, how can they do that? Because what we've seen in cultural planning for kids in care is, well, they make a ribbon skirt, or at my child's school, there's a native resource worker. So they think those two things, they're meeting all their cultural needs, for a whole year if they're doing that. So that's kind of why we want to do that. And then the sign language just kind of gave our own history. It was universal, but it was just neat, all the different, areas. So it was neat to capture that. And then the other thing, it goes back into the symbols. There's so much stuff, there was so much, it was interesting just to learn that and taking that from the winter count stuff, just all these symbols. Because even like my son, last year, he was at a Catholic school in Lethbridge, and he was doing homework. He said, I got to do my winter count. And I was like, what are you doing? So, these schools in the cities now, they're using that. So you have, all races doing their own stories. So the neat thing is how do we capture that? Because then we want these kids too to learn that. Because a lot of times kids in care, they're coded. They're always coded FASD, ADHD, but then when we've taken kids to learn culture and we've taken them to ceremonies, they sit for hours without, it's like, how come a child that's FASD and all these, but when they come to a ceremony, they can sit there for 5 hours and not be uncomfortable. So that's kind of, some of the stuff that's in this app. And then, after that, kind of we've created that, and then we're just figuring, okay, what else can we do? Because, so then we came up with, the technology new as this VR, virtual reality, so utilizing that. So that one was called Piikani Skako, so Piikani Land. So what we did was we actually got it was a New Zealand campus. It was a New Zealand campus, and then when you put on this VR headset, you get a virtual tour of the whole campus, and you learn about that. So when we were working with the developer, he said, why don't you do that? Because then kids, because we have kids way up in Edmonton, we have kids in Calgary. Some of them may never come to our reserve and not know anything about that. So what we're able to do is kind of go to 10 locations, traditional sites in Piikani, and basically all over, even Waterton Lakes, like, and just learn traditional stories, so where tobacco was built. And when you put on that headset, you're virtually there. So we had a lot of elders help us. And just some of the things we have, we even utilize those new technologies with, what do you call them, drones. So putting all that and, into this. And so that's kind of how it looks. With that, you just kind of has an old map of, okay, where the land was. And then you can kind of click where you want to go. And then it kind of tells you. So Peter Strikes with the Gun helped us. And we've had, we've had a lot of elders. So even like the scholarly elders. So we had like Eldon Yellowhorn talked about kind of the research history that's there. So a lot of them, it's just a short video because we're thinking if it's for a youth. So it's like 2-3 minutes just to learn about this area. And then also to bundle holders. So we got our own, a lot of our bundle holders to share about bundles. This is where it originally came from, the beaver bundle. And so that was, that's something that we can capture and kind of keeping our own data developing for kids. And another thing was we actually made a game. So just kind of seeing, so it's our own traditional take on a hoop game. So it allows, them to just play a game too when they get bored. So that's kind of just a side thing to, to allow. But to go through the whole VR takes about 2 hours to go through like every single thing. So there's so much, it took a lot of time. It took about 2.5 years to do that. So, and it was neat. We went everywhere, like to the Buffalo Jump, and we went kind of all these different areas. So that's, so after we did, the VR, I can go to the next slide. Just recently too, in children's services, we follow a provincial system. So that provincial system is an intervention system. So what we've kind of learned, when you work with government funding and reporting, it's like data is kind of important. And what was created for us, and we're not able to make our own data, in our where we come from. So that's kind of why we were able to create our own database. So we realized there's a lot of, there's a lot of having like sovereignty when you have your own data. Because right now, when you put that data into Alberta's system, that's Alberta's data. So we always got to get their permission. So with this, it kind of allows us, we call it Begunny Case DB, so case database. But just, is a kind of same thing, utilizing that, because that's kind of us, like in Alberta, in Canada and Alberta, we're working towards creating our own legislation. We don't want to follow the Alberta Child Youth Family Enhancement Act. We want to create our own child welfare, protection, how we can, so that's why we created a database. And the database is kind of, one of the things too, I've seen like in research in the last few years, how do we measure data? Like how can a person measure data? So nobody had a proper way even asking researchers. So, we found a real simple way. And then, so that's kind of like an example of how when you log into the system. So we have a prevention program. So the prevention program is basically, it tries to keep, family, kids coming into care. So it works directly in Brockett. It allows, they kind of, where there's no worry of investigation or child protection workers. It's just a very supportive program. And a lot of it helps with poverty. That's the issue. A lot of it is. And so, with this, this new database is going to allow them to input their data. So how are we supporting our community rather than just always looking at, because a lot of it is basic poverty, and that kind of can show, okay, how can we help our families rather than just, because years back, kids were getting apprehended because of poverty. It was like they didn't have stuff, and it was silly. Like 12 years ago, if somebody was drunk, you could still you could lock up a kid for that, and then 12 years ago, you could apprehend, parents because a mom was abusing marijuana. So it's just, things have changed and evolved. But what we see with kind of the database, it just, what we want to do is just kind of capture our own. Because then after a year of inputting data and with culture, we were able to just kind of add a lot of ceremonies. Because we've seen that too in working with Alberta. You can go to the next slide. A lot of like Lethbridge social workers, Calgary social workers, So Calgary social workers, when they do that, it's the typical things. They have they made a ribbon skirt or they got a Blackfoot name. So 2 or 3 things over the course of like 3 years. And that's their way of, thinking, okay, that child knows their identity. And we're like, that's scary because, we grew up with lots of things. So how can we push that into kids in care? And then, so basically the data, we connect now, all the ceremonies. We worked with a bunch of people, have these codes. So in a year, then you can kind of measure. So if they went to a Thunder Medicine pipe bundle, and then if they went to, a bundle feed and all these seasonal ceremonies. So that's kind of some of the more detail. And then it kind of shows that, okay, this person, and once you measure that, you can see the difference of people. Because we see that right now, like we have foster parents, they say, I meet their needs. And right now we are running into custody disputes. There's a lot of non-natives that are trying to, get kids. And us, we're not in a way of battling or fighting. It's just we want that child to know where they come from, because there's high rates that's always linked to, if they don't know their identity, that's the high rates of, homelessness and all the poverty issues related to that. So and then after that, with this identity, Hope will go into her presentation, but I just kind of wanted to give you, just the work. We're always kind of evolving. How can we teach these kids? Because, I think of it like for a child in care, it's like, think of that as your own child. So if that child is getting bare minimum, let's just get the bare minimum, that's crazy. I wouldn't do that. So you think of your own niece, I wouldn't do that. So you think, we have to change that view, because it's still happening where kids are not being treated equal in Alberta, like in children's services. So, that's just kind of what we're pushing for. And now too, with the database too, is in Biggani, we have high rates of kids graduating high school. You don't see that anywhere else, and so we're doing some right there. And we always credit that to culture, identity, because when they know that, we see more success. And it just, you don't see that anywhere. Alberta doesn't document that. So now in our database, we can kind of start verifying now how culture is benefiting these kids, by utilizing capturing and, kind of thinking outside the box. How can they learn things differently? So then the next thing we went into was a year ago, is actually Hope just started with us a year ago, and, we created these genograms. So I told her, how can we, we used to say indigenize, but now we're going to say Biggani-ize genogram. So that's so Hope will go into her presentation, but that just wanted to give you how that is. So go ahead.
Okay. Okay, my name is Hope Grier Stewart. My Blackfoot name is Nimatsiuksi. I'm from Biggani Nation, proud member of Biggani Nation. And this is the project that I've been working on since last June. So when we developed it last year, we were like thinking, what should we name it? So we kind of gave it a long name because it has so much meaning to us. The Biggani Six of Gates at the B Genogram and Identity Revitalization Project. So personal introduction, my mom is Amanda Grier, my dad is Sheldon Stewart. My maternal grandparents are Charles and Eileen Grier. My paternal grandparents are Maureen Stewart and Jack Stewart. So I come from the Yellowhorn family, Crowshoe, Provost, Grier, Chicky, Big Bull, and Stewart families. So my Blackfoot name is Nimatsiuksi. I was transferred that name when I was 8 years old. It was my great-grandma Jane Big Bull's name, so it's Old Blackfoot. It means flies gracefully into the west. It was transferred to me by Reg Crowshoe and Elsie Crowshoe, and it was done through Blackfoot protocol. We made payment of blankets and money, and then we had an honor dance and a giveaway to follow. My clans are the Hairy Nose clan from my Grier side, the Lone Fighters from the Crowshoe side, Buffalo Chip from my Missy Yellowhorn Crowshoe side, Padded Saddle and White Breast clans from the Big Bull family. So, what are the first questions you ask a young Indigenous person when you first meet them? Anyone? Where are you from? Who are your parents? Who are your grandparents? So what does this question do? It floods the conversation with tons of information. You start to think, hey, I went to school with your mom, or me and your grandma, or our grandmas used to be best friends, or just everything. Like, you just think of so many things when you know who that person is and where they come from. You'll even start to think, hey, do you really look like you're from the Big Bull family, or you really look like you're a Crowshoe, So what do we want for Biggani children? So we hope for our Biggani children to be able to confidently identify and interact with their family and their Biggani people. So when that question does come up, they could answer it confidently. So acknowledgements. So I'd like to acknowledge and the extraordinary debt I owe to the Biggani elders, the Biggani Nation people, and the knowledge holders for their willingness to share with our project. When I've approached people, they've been more than willing to share information, and even when I ask them, hey, can I record this conversation, they're like, yeah, of course, here, set it up right in front of me. Or I'm like, can I take your picture? They're like, yeah, take my picture. So they're more than willing to share information. And I wouldn't be able to do this work without the support of Kelly, Provost, my supervisor, and Tressa Yellowhorn, who encouraged me to go on with this project. So the mission and vision. So our mission is to preserve and document essential information about Piikani history, clan systems, the family trees, Blackfoot names, and Piikani identity. Our vision is to have Piikani children that are proud and contributing members of society, who have a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, and who know their history. And I just seen out here in the hallway, I think it says something like, know your roots to, something about know your roots to be able to follow your future, or something like that. So how was genograms done before? And how I mean before is in the child welfare system. So genograms were limited. They included people on the genograms who were not related to the child or relevant to the child in any way. So it was kind of like the wrong person was input into the genogram. They're very outdated and missing a lot of important family members. So how the cultural practices were done before, they were very surface level. So a social worker or a caseworker would bring a kiddo to a powwow once a year and call that good, you know. They were also taught very generic indigenous teachings in school, so very pan-Indian, or like putting us all in one category rather than our distinct categories like Blackfoot, Ojibwe, Cree, you know. And there was limited family knowledge. So there was no generational family stories passed on, no family pictures, no family obituaries or places of burial. Yeah, just not knowing anything about where you come from. So this is a previous example of a genogram that was in the database, the current database that we're using. So as you could see, it's very limited. I think even a part of that genogram wasn't even correct. So it was very limited, missing family members, outdated, only done early on in involvement during the investigation period, and the child usually does not get a copy of this genogram. It's just for file purposes. Challenges we have faced. So elders, they're beginning to forget. Oh, bless you. Elders are beginning to forget. A challenge we've faced is finding all the Piikani clan system informations. To my knowledge, I believe there's 27 or 28, and so far we've only been able to find 17. Church records are sometimes hard to decipher. So church records, they're usually handwritten. They're written by a French-speaking person trying to write down Blackfoot words. So sometimes it's hard to even read what they're trying to say in there. Not all records are able to be found. So sometimes a record will be stowed away in a museum, but it won't be marked or labeled correctly. So there's no way to find that unless you stumble across it. Some records are long distances away, requiring to be seen in person. So the place that we haven't been able to go to yet is in Ottawa. It's the Canadian Archive. Yeah. Canadian Archives. So the Canadian Archives, they hold lots of information like all the Indian agent records, some of the band memberships, the old band membership lists, and probably some pictures and church records. I'll let you explain this part.
So yeah, so because we have to follow, we live in Alberta, and we follow the Indian Act. So the Section 88 is constitutional. So basically, you have to follow the province's laws. So these are key things that in policy. So like when you're working with a child in care in Alberta, is you got to provide. There's two sections basically that they see in there. So Indigenous experience. So what does that mean? Like, so a lot of you think of this as a lot of non-natives, white people. Okay, how am I going to do this for a child? Indigenous experience, and then preserving family, strengths-based connection, collaboration, continuous improvement. So we're able to kind of convert that. So how can we kind of do it? What we know, what we know is is Piikani people. So it's kind of So we change those. Just kind of sharing like the generations and sharing how we can utilize elders. How can you what we know, and that's a way of it's. So that's to us we see that's meaningful involvement. The word meaningful involvement is really used in Alberta Children's Services. Can go to the next one. So this other piece in the policy of the Child Youth Family Enhancement Act. So again to Indigenous experience. So we want to so we kind of convert. How can Hope really worked hard with this to just ensuring there's accurate, authentic Blackfoot ceremonies are followed. Some of them too, they don't. We've had that too, and some of the foster parents they don't know. So we're not saying not all are bad. Like some, they really do care about the children and take good care. So it's kind of our role to help them. So that way they learn properly, they know things properly. So in the past we've seen like, they'll have books of the Plains Indians. So we had that one time. It was actually a white lady. She was out by it's like Tabor. It was kind of out there, and very nice lady. And she had like a book of the the Wild West, and then she even had some little horses. And so she thought having those would be she really thought. But and we just kind of it's to support them, because that's the thing. It's too we need to change how, because a lot of our foster kids, what we see is when they come to our community, you see a difference. Like you see if their kid is in a white foster care, they come to our reserve, they're very disconnected. They just stay by their foster parent. Then the kids that grow up with family, the kinship, the ones that are with family, you see them running around playing and wrestling, and you just see them having fun. So you see that difference. So that's kind of why, we kind of work, how can we create this, more meaningful? And that way we're still following policy, but at least we've kind of done it our way to interpret, okay, this is how us as Piikani are going to make sure that these kids are going to, get what they need for culture, identity. So that's,
Okay. So what do we provide to the child? So we provide a family information book. So, I'll just list them and then I'll go into more detail. So we provide a family information book, a Blackfoot style genogram, family photos, and Western style genogram. So the family book, I'll show you. The family book is right here.
So we did a couple. So I know because this is for research, but there's a lot of confidentiality in children's services. But because we're all 6 to be, so some of the things, we don't want to take pictures because there is some names, but we want to share this too, just the meaningful work. So we just kind of want to share that too. Like technically we're not in Alberta, so we're not breaking any law, but we just ask, just if there's anything like when we do the genogram, just kind of we'll show you what we did. You'll see names, but it's more of that was. It's really it'll be interesting once we get into that. So yeah.
So this is a family book. It's this one in particular is 168 pages long. So each book includes the Blackfoot prayer, the Piikanisini statement or declaration on what it means to be a Piikani person, family stories. So any family stories I'm able to find about this particular child and their family interviews, family Blackfoot names, both current and historical, family obituaries, and multiple genograms for main family trees related to this child. So what I mean by that is, so within the book, it opens up into different genograms to each family that's related to this child.
So when they have an aunt, so if they have an aunt, say on a Provost side or, Grier side, they can kind of learn about that specific family. So when you do genograms, the code, there's the circle and the square, who's a male, female. So that's kind of, so we can share more a little bit about that, but it's really neat. Just allows them to learn on their own. they kind of learn, okay, so I can't date him, that's my cousin. So.
And also learn when they're ready to learn.
Yeah, one of the things that were brought up too is some of them, like we do this all in a, in a meaningful way, in a sensitive way, because one thing we were just kind of recently brought up is some of the kids, when they see this info, they start seeing the negative things. That person never wanted me. That person had nothing to do with it. So you want to do it in a real respectful way, so that way they're learning properly, so it's going to benefit them.
So this is just more examples. So everywhere on the book, it's all divided into sections. So yeah, the family obituary section, the news clipping section. So I use, it's called newspaperarchive.com, and that's, it has compiled all digitized news clippings. So I just kind of search in. Sometimes it takes me a month or two to find all these information. This last one took me 5 months to complete. The Blackfoot names, so Blackfoot name, the meaning, and more additional spelling, because that's what I'm kind of running into, is so many different ways to spell one word in Blackfoot. So I just kind of put 2 of the ones that sound correct. Family photos, and again, the Blackfoot prayer. So the Blackfoot genogram, this is printed on a vinyl banner. So it says 4 foot by 2 foot on here, but it just depends on how detailed the genogram is. Sometimes it ends up being 6 foot by 4 foot. Like it's only so small you could get it before you can't read it anymore. Family members are portrayed with their ethnicity of origin via symbols. So Piikani man, Piikani woman, Siksika, etc. Blackfoot names of the family members are listed as well as their English names. And then if applicable, we do put the child's Blackfoot name and all the last names that they're related to will also be on the banner. So these are the symbols that we've come up with so far.
A lot of this is taken, like some of it's from winter count, because a lot of stuff, it tells stories. So what we found out, so this was back 7 years ago, and we got a bunch of elders, and actually the one elder who helped us the most was we had to ask the Kainai to help us. No, Wilton Goodstriker really knows, he's like an encyclopedia, so he really knew all these symbols, so that's how we were able to capture a lot, and then it was able to, share those. So these kind of identify, so when you do like with, with a square and a circle, like in a, a westernized genogram, it kind of doesn't, so that's kind of why we Piikaniized this, because we wanted to identify, so that way the child is learning these symbols. So that way if my dad is from, Siksika, and if my mom is white or something like that, then they're identifying. So that way that child is learning on their own these symbols. So that way they can identify, okay, so did you know, I have relatives that are from, whatever other reserve. So there's so many symbols that we've, that there's so much research that needs to be out there to learn about this and just learn about, all these symbols. Because when we were kind of looking through symbols, that was back in December, Hope and I were at U of C at their research, and they had all these symbols. So when Treaty 7 in 1877 was signed, it was a money symbol. So that kind of tells, okay, there's a story about that. So a lot of us know, okay, we all know what, some of that, okay, it's tied, but it's all a story. So this kind of allows that, and that's kind of why we want to put the symbols. So then, that's something that's neat. So a child to learn that, because I would have never, I just started learning this really 7 years ago. So it's neat to imagine teaching that to a 9-year-old and what more they're going to know when they're 17, all that. So. The lines on her head. On her head.
For Ghana? Yeah, it's just so the symbols, they're, to my knowledge, they come from the sign language. So the line right here is the sign language for Ghana. The lines right here for Piikani is the sign language for Piikani person. Siksika, it's Blackfoot, so they do the symbol for the Blackfoot. So that's why it's like that. So here's a bigger example. We'll show you a actual one when we're done. So the Western style genogram, these ones have up to 300 family members, sometimes more, sometimes less. It's just all what I could find at the time. It's printed on a vinyl banner as well. The last one I completed was 6 foot long, so it just varies by how much information I could find. And this style is completed on GenoPro software. GenoPro, it's just a computer program. It's really quite good. Like, I think it's $250 to buy your membership, and you only have to pay it once. So where are we finding this information? So we're finding this information in the Brocket Liberandum Mirum, the church book. So Liberandum Mirum directly translates to Book of Souls in, I believe, the Catholic religion. So that's, I got it reprinted. This book, it's on the Alberta Provincial Archives website.
We can pass it around. So each tribe has one. So all Treaty 7, they all have. So if you go to the Alberta Archives in Edmonton, it's, so basically it was the priests and nuns were documenting, okay, this was what their Blackfoot name was. And then it was, so this was created back in 53. So 71.
The last entry was 53.
So the last entry was 1953. So that was, so it's neat to see all that. And just, so there are so many names that, but we can pass that around. And basically just there's a bunch of names that are lost. It's like, holy, there's all these names that are not even in existence anymore, you know, in our community. So that's a neat thing. And that's kind of some of the stuff that we're trying to capture. So a lot of these kids to learn about that history. Okay, what happened with this name? And a lot of, you know, where did this, how come this name's not used anymore? And
a lot, another place I find information is from obituaries. So the current ones up until 2019, I believe, is like the most recent. I believe it's 2019, might be a little bit farther back, but they're online at the funeral home websites. But anything before then, it's archived on newspaperarchive.com. But that only works if the family chose to put their family's obituary in the newspaper. So if the family didn't put the obituaries in the newspaper, there won't be any information on that website for them. Family interviews. So I go out to the community of Piikani and I just interview anyone who could provide information or history for this child who is willing and able to, and Piikani elders as well. Archive news clippings. So this is the same thing as the obituaries. Just if that person, say they used to play hockey and their team won a medal, they'll be in the newspaper. Or, I don't know, say they're protesting and they got their picture taken, then they'll be in the newspaper. The other place I was able to find information is the Alberta Indigenous Death Index from the years 1923 to 1945. So anything that's over 100 years old is public information. So this Alberta Death Index is on the Alberta Archives of Alberta website. It's all digitized, but it's handwritten. So, for instance, one of the people on the genograms, I couldn't find who that person was. I was searching and searching and searching, and I couldn't figure out who the mom of this set of siblings was. Finally, I got a name. It was Ada. And then I searched back to the Alberta Death Index, and her name was spelt differently, and I was able to find her. So just looking wherever I could find information. Sometimes it takes me a few days to find one person, but we eventually find people. So this is an example of the Brocket Liberandum Mirum. So how do we read this document? So it's being passed around right now. On the far left is the last name of that family unit, and then in the middle, so this one, As you can see, it's kind of hard to read what that name is, but to my translation, it was Omak stomach, which translates to big bull. And the X right next to his name and the year, that means that he died, so that's the year that he passed away. Right under him is his wife's name. So unfortunately with this book, it's kind of hard to know who the wife's parents were. You're only able to find information about the man. And then sometimes if, say, the wife passed away in childbirth or from illness, usually back then they would remarry. So they would have, the first wife would be listed as number 1, and then if they got remarried, number 2. And then say this man, Big Bull, had kids with the first wife, so all the kids of the first wife will have a number 1 in brackets. And then if he had kids with the second wife, all her kids would have a number 2 in brackets. And so this book is kind of like, have you ever read a textbook and it's kind of like a cat and mouse game where it's like flip to page 22, so you flip back to page 22, go to page 121, so you flip back. That's how this is. So for instance, the children, this Polly Marie, his actual name is Nap. So if you go to page 14 on this book, you'll be able to find Nap Big Bull, and you'll find all of his kids and his family. So that's how this book works. So obituaries. These ones are all kind of old obituaries. So we're able to find their first, middle, last name, their date of birth, date of death, their age, when they passed away, where they were born, where they passed away, who their parents were, their siblings, if they had children. Sometimes they're grandchildren, but most times they don't list grandchildren because there's most times too many. When and where their funeral was, what kind of person they were. Like for instance, Missy Crowshoe in the middle, it explains that she was a loving mother and a homemaker. She encouraged all her children to complete their education and instilled pride in their family heritage. So if I didn't know that, I would be so amazed to learn that about my great-great-grandma, you know. Family interviews. So what are we collecting from these interviews? We're collecting stories, family history that would normally be passed on by parents and grandparents. The interview is audio recorded, and then I use this, it's called Otter AI, and I upload the audio to it, and it transcribes it for me. So it makes the work quite fast. And then I add the written interview into the family book for the child to read. Family photos. Photos were collected from numerous sources: the Glenbow Archives, University of Calgary, Alberta Archives in Edmonton, the National Truth and Reconciliation Database. So that's, you could go on there when you get home, and all the photos that I was able to find will be on there. And private photo collections. So how I do the private photo collections, usually when I go interview someone, they'll be like, hey, you could have these photos. I've been meaning to give them to this family. You could scan them for them. And then it's like they're a keeper of those photos until that family's ready. So, so far, I've been able to collect over 400 Begunny photos, and those are the books right here. Because I was starting to collect so many photos, I had to figure out a way to organize them, so I made them into books. So everything that was collected from the Glenbow Museum and the University of Calgary will be in this book. And then everything collected from the National Truth and Reconciliation. Because there were so many photos on there, I had to make 2 volumes. Oh wait, 2 volumes, 3 volumes. So this one, these are all the Sacred Heart Indian Residential School. And then this one is just the schools in general. I believe this one is the St. Cyprian. So, yeah. And some of those aren't labeled, so I've also, that's kind of next on our list, left an area to name the kids, the kids in there.
So with the genogram, yeah, what we want to do is, because you want these kids to learn like the Blackfoot names, so that way, you know, so then they can know, okay, all their siblings' Blackfoot names, you know, their parents, their grandparents, and then they start learning the story. So the good thing is Hope is able to capture a lot of that. And then a lot of the pictures, we'll pass those. Those are pictures that she got actually from my Provost clan, so it's neat to see all these pictures. And even we'd never seen a picture of my dad when he was little. So he was only like 4, and it was like, isn't this your dad? And I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap. So we seen him when he was like 8 and all that, but never when he was that little.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I was searching through them, and I was like, gee, this kid looks like Kelly. And it was just his dad. But yeah, this is some of the old photos I've been able to find. So let's see if you could see my mouse on here. So like these guys right here, these are the ones, the originals that are in the Liber Andamirum book. So that page that I showed you, Big Bull, this is him right here. So this one is Big Bull. So all the information in that book, that's about him. This is Yellowhorn. This is Jim Morning Bull, right? Jim Morning Bull? I believe it's Jim. Yeah, and then this guy right here, that's him, and then that's his son. This one right here, this is my grandma. She looks just like me. So like just things like that, you could, we want our beginning children to be able to do that, to be able to point people out and say, hey, that's my great grandma. Oh. So when all of this is done, we present it to the child and we tell them their family story. So the family gets to take home all of the information we mentioned, the family book, the Blackfoot genogram, the Western style genogram, and the family photo prints. So
this one, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. The information is explained, and then usually they have quite a few questions, so we answer all the questions that they may have.
This girl just turned 18, so we did get her permission to kind of share all this, but she grew up in a Mennonite home, so she grew up with Mennonite. America, what do they call them here? Amish. They're kind of similar to the Amish. So, but with the with that Mennonite, they never did try to convert her. They just cared for her because she's, she had a lot of, developmental. But for her, so to finally kind of learn that she didn't know much about her family, so this. So the good thing we were able to do is, we got some elders to come, and we had a blessing. We all got her face painted, so that way it was all done just to make sure it's always to help this girl. And this one is really emotional because that girl, just her telling telling Hope, like, thank you, you don't know how much this means to me. And then the foster parent, she was crying too on the phone. She's like, Kelly, you don't know what you guys have done. You just helped her so much. She's just constantly going through this book, like constantly reading, and she hangs that poster on her wall. So she just, and that's kind of all that research. So this girl can now, that's the reward, just seeing. So she can now tell her own, if she becomes a mother, or if she, to her siblings or her nieces and nephews, she, can start telling stories. And that's something we want that's natural. And it's really, it was really neat to see that. So.
Should I get Chassie one?
Yeah, we can show the other one. So yeah, we did get verbal consent from them, but again, yeah, we'll just ask, don't take any pictures of these. So just that way I don't get sued in Alberta.
Yeah. Oh, and we'll show you quickly before. This is how the genograms turn out. So
this is another one of another child that we learned about. So what and it kind of connects them all to all their families. So then they start learning all the last names. These are all the ones that they learn about, so that way they know I'm related to the Griers, Godselves, Big Throats, like all these. So that's kind of they start connecting. And then that's how they start knowing, okay, this is where I'm from, and these. And then even just capturing, because these are all stories. And that's kind of Hope's kind of helped them learn about okay, what do these symbols mean? There's stories behind them, and then just, so yeah, so that's what we want to just kind of share that, so.
And then the other genogram.
So the one, yeah, Hope
Western
did
one.
so much research on, so we'll give you an example of a Western research. That's the one she was overwhelmed. She did this, like, it was just like endless, and it's not even complete. Like, we found out there's more
Yeah,
to
there's
it. This
more.
is just, we had a grandpa that wasn't able to share info with us. So, and then, we can, so this is like how using a Western genogram.
1 sec.
So if you think of that's just one child, and then so that way, so it's pretty enormous. But then they start learning the history of just all these generations and who they're all related to. So it is kind of neat. That way they can start learning on their own way. Okay, I'm related to the Provost, or I'm related to the No Chiefs, or any of those. Now even I have relatives now in Browning. So how can I learn more about that? And that's kind of now how we can utilize a lot of our elders to go back and. Can you teach? They do have relatives, in Heartbutte or something. So they start telling them stories, and that's the stuff that Hope is starting to, transcribe. So then they hear it on their own. Because the thing to it we find is some of these elders, we're losing them fast. That's the scary thing. And people always say, I should have recorded my grandparents when they were alive. I should have recorded this. And so that's kind of why we want to capture this now, so that at least these kids have something. And then this other one is, we can share this other, that was
Okay.
that's the one she says is, this one took her 5 months to do.
Well, this and
Yeah,
the
those,
most recent
yeah.
one.
Where does it go?
So this one.
So it's just neat. And the kids, like when we did this one, she was just so proud of what she, when she said, this is all mine, so
I
it's
could
neat.
have
So
this,
yeah.
she said. Yeah.
So and just, again with the symbols, because a lot, then it goes more into detail. Because then, a lot of it captures their Blackfoot name. So then she's kind of learning on her own, okay, what is my grandma's Blackfoot name? And then it kind of goes into more detail. So yeah, it's just kind of neat to, kind of put this now. So then these kids are learning it in a different way, and just really thinking outside the box to help these kids learn about their identity.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, that's it. You're done.
well, that's it.
What time is it? 3:38. Oh, this one goes here.
Any questions?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah.
Some of this comes in there because there's stories. So when elders tell stories, they'll actually share stuff. So the priests, the nuns, they used to be, and a lot of it, some of them they'll tell detailed stories like that person used to really get abused, and that's where we're able to kind of share. So some people then they learn in a different way, because then some of them, like when they just see it, like, oh, that person was an addict, that person was this. But then when you hear the different ways, like, we kind of learned, well, their mom there was a lot of abuse in the boarding schools. Then you kind of know there's that sensitivity to, okay,
The
then
reason
okay,
why.
that's why there's different things. So it just really depends on some of the families. Like some of them you learn crazy stories that you're like, gee, that's crazy. But, you put that in there because those are stuff like we want to see, like that's kind of honoring that, because it's honoring that child's family, their ancestors, because they can start sharing those stories, like we knew your grandpa was a cowboy, or we knew, your grandmother, had this bundle, or, and that's stuff that's the really neat stuff that these kids are learning. So that's what we want to capture, just so that way they can tell their own stories. And then when they're, when they're elders, at least they can tell stuff, because we've seen that now where it's scary, they're in their late 50s and they don't know anything, and then they're not connected to the community. So, the goal with this now, measuring it to see, okay, I think we're going to have progress now with these kids learning in a different way.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking about that because of the, the schools outside our reserves. How they don't capture that historical piece the way we know it.
Yeah.
And I just thought,
Some of it comes because a lot of it came from that Truth and Reconciliation database, and all that is all from the boarding schools, like all that when those things took place. So some of those stories, and that's a sensitive way to because, you know, we always want to, you know, it's respectful, not to make them be angry and I'm like, I hate this, I hate that, I hate priests, you know, I hate Catholicism, you know, all that. It's always to be respectful, and that's something that we're trying to, you know, do it slowly, but yeah.